And we are live. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to the Evolving Your Career Growth Ask Me Anything edition. Um, I'm going to introduce my co hosts. I will start with David.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm David. I am a product designer working at Shopify right now. I live in Canada, Toronto. So if anybody here is from Canada, Toronto, please say hi. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Everest?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Everest Wagu. I have transitioned, so currently I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Zabura Technology. So it's a crypto payment fintech platform, and it's good to be here. So I'll be offering my marketing, product marketing experience in my answers. So welcome.
Great. Rebecca, do you want to go?
Hi. Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome to our panel. We'll talk about evolving your career growth here. Thanks for joining us. My name's Rebecca. I am originally from the US. I live in Scotland now. I am a content designer for HubSpot and previously worked in civic tech and fintech as well. So yeah, glad to be here.
Nice. Yina?
Franco, are you gonna introduce yourself at all?
I was planning to go last, but if you want, I
Oh,
can go
okay.
now.
I thought I was last. You can go.
Okay. Yeah, sure. My name is Franco. I'm a principal designer at a stealth startup. I'm originally from Argentina. I travel the world while I work, so I'm currently in Serbia in a self-converted school bus where I live.
Nice. Cool. My name is Nina. I'm head of product design at a conversational AI company called Zap AI. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. Currently live in Boston, Massachusetts right now, and looking forward to sharing some career tips with you all.
Perfect. Thanks everyone, and thanks everyone that is joining. I'm going to start with a few questions to the mentors, but please feel free to ask your questions. We'll be reading them and answering live. So on the right side of the panel, you should see two bubbles on the top. That's where you can ask all your questions. For the first question of the night, I'm going to ask, what's the most important thing to do when switching career and transitioning from one field to another? David?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the most important thing when you're transitioning from like one career to another is to really take like don't be like lean into like the experiences that you had in your previous place, right? Even if it's like just completely different. I think like the world of design is so open and that any experience that you have, whether it's like completely random or completely different from what you're currently doing today, is still very valid experience, right? It kind of like shapes the way that you see the world, and that I think that's what a lot of that will speak to like how you do design and like how you view things. So to me, like the most important thing is definitely like just lean into like those experiences and don't be afraid of like utilizing them when it comes to talking about your designs or talking about like yourself even, right? Like I think a lot of people these days think that like their experiences that are completely quote unquote irrelevant are irrelevant, and they downplay them a little bit too much, right? When you can really just lean into it, and it actually like increases your uniqueness as well as like a designer, a candidate if you're still applying, and it helps you stand out as well from like the rest of the crowd. So I would say for me, it's definitely just like lean into your previous experiences, regardless of like how quote unquote like how ridiculous they may seem or how quote unquote irrelevant they may seem.
Totally agree, David. Like, let me share some of my personal experience. I started my career as a dancer I danced in New York professionally for 3 years. And then using my dance experience, I convinced architecture school to accept me because I'm saying that my space making skills in dance is equivalent to architecture. So just use your past experience and your past skills to try to try to fit it into your new industry. And from architecture, I moved on to UX and now conversational UX, which again, I would also argue that my architecture background is a huge help in understanding the information architecture, understanding the structural issues in conversational design as well. So definitely agree with it, but do not hide your past. Like show it like you own it.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely have to agree, and that leads to my second question, which is how do you talk about your skills from other fields in a way that resonates in interviews? What do you think?
I think a big part of that is learning what the terms are and how teams are structured in your new field. So really kind of researching, getting to know the space, are there project managers? Are there designers? What do they call research? What are the different methods? It really just depends where you're coming from and kind of what company you're at. And once you sort of know how people talk about things and frame things and do work in your new field or the field you're trying to break into, then you can start to position stuff you've already done in that way. So using Yina's example, she's a dancer, but looking to get into UX design, she's going to use UX design language to talk about, how her dance was able to sort of represent this skill or how it really helped her in that way, which is really useful in this other UX, world. So I think a lot of it is like learning the new language of your new field and doing that translation so that recruiters don't have to guess, so that when people read your LinkedIn, your CV, your resume, they don't have to guess. They can see in their language and their skills and their terms what you've done.
I'm going to give an example of one thing that I made a connection from my architecture background to when I was interviewing for UX jobs. I told them I'm really good at layouts, which architects lay out a plan all the time, and it's not a skill that you can learn really. You have to have a sense of how to lay out a space, and that's the same as kind of designing an interface really, where elements lay out what's the relationship between each element.
I would like to add that there's also the chance that you can there's a lot of things that maybe in a communicational way are kind of like broken in the when we build products. So for example, although designers and developers should be like working together, usually they are not. So for example, I come from an engineering background. I was a developer, and when I switched to UX, one thing that I did a lot to help me get my first few jobs is saying that I was like kind of like the bridge or the connection between these two worlds. So there's always a way that you can leverage and use the skills you had to get into this new field. Let me ask the following question, maybe to Everest this time. How do you build confidence early on in your career?
Okay, very very interesting question because you don't really. You have to give yourself that confidence because when you are starting up earlier in your career, you have like these amazing experts in that field that you sometimes you might be intimidated by the accomplishments of people in the industry. So I think one thing that most people early on in their career face is the issue of imposter syndrome, where you feel like you are not good enough. But you can't be good enough if you always think you're not good enough. So you will never be good enough. So I think having that confidence that yes, I have certain skills that might be lacking or experience, but I'm willing to learn. But in the meantime, I'm confident in my ability to deliver with the skills I currently possess, and I'm open to learning more, to gain more skills to help me climb higher in my career ladder. Because if that confidence is not there at the beginning of your career, you'll be stagnant. You won't learn and you won't grow in the field. Because every field you go in, like in product marketing field, I know some like amazing product marketers, but that shouldn't make you feel like how I don't know when I'll get to this level. So the best thing is have confidence in yourself that I have the skills right, certain skills right now that have gotten me this far, and be open to learn more from those that you see, and that's why we have ADPList available, so you can connect with mentors and speak with them and interact with them. But every individual earlier in your career, you need to give yourself that confidence. Tell yourself that you can do it, then you will actually get it done.
Perfect. Thank you, Everest. There's a lot of questions from the Q&A. So we're going to start with the most voted question that comes from Jennifer. Jennifer asks, how do you navigate the limitations of X years of experience requirements when making career switches?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Please,
Um,
please, actually frustrating.
I would say that that people, especially women, are known to only apply for jobs that they're 100% qualified for. So I would say even if there is a amount of years of experience there, it still may be worth sending your application out, especially if you don't have to make a lot of adjustments or changes to that particular application. You have it ready or near ready. A lot of tech companies now I've seen say something like, they even say out loud, we know that sometimes people don't apply. We want you to, you might not meet all of the requirements, but we'd like to see your credentials or like your application. So I think it's something that employers are starting to take notice of and are sort of more open to. It's sort of nice to have skills or years of experience versus have to have. Another thing too is to look for apprenticeships or paid internships and things like that, junior level roles. One thing too that I advise some people I mentor is if you have the time and bandwidth to do some volunteer work, design work or marketing work or whatever it is, the field you want to get into, that's a way to not only give back to your community, but also get some experience you can put into your portfolio.
Yeah, I would say like this is such a common question that I get in like every single one of my like most of like my mentoring sessions. And I think like, I basically tell all my mentees that like just forget about the requirement, right? Just like forget about what the heck the thing even says, right? Like I think like those are there for quote unquote like formality sakes, right? But they're never like hard like requirements in my personal like opinion, right? So saying that like there's limits and the requirements, like immediately you kind of like shut the door on like probably a gazillion different positions that you probably are actually qualified to do, right? So I would say like when you see those things, like the X years of requirements, you need this, you need that, you need that, like just apply anyways, because you never know like what it's going to be like if you're going to get a response back or not. And the only way for you to know is by applying. Like unless so if you don't apply, like it'll always be a no, right? So I would say like just jump in, go for it. You have absolutely nothing to lose, right? The best scenario is just that like you get an interview and then great, you move on from that, right? But the worst case scenario is like, okay, great, well now you just move on to the next one, right? So don't look at those as limitations, right? I would just forget about those, forget about the years of experience entirely.
Yeah. Seriously, you have nothing to lose. If anything, you actually got a practice on writing your resume and cover letter, or got a practice of an interview, which is only gaining anything.
And there's no blacklists. There's no like it never happens that if you apply, like, you get blacklisted. Like, the worst case, the worst thing that can happen is like maybe for some companies you cannot apply for 6 months, but I mean, it's not that bad. Let's go with the next question from Daniela. Uh, she says, there's a huge stigma against bootcamp grads. How can we navigate through that? As someone who is self-taught, I believe that my knowledge shouldn't be dismissed if I don't have a degree in a specific field.
I mean, I think
So,
it all shows through your portfolio, right? I mean, if you're good or not, it doesn't matter where you come from. Boot camp, master degree, bachelor's degree, doesn't matter. It's all your portfolio shows what work you can actually do.
Yeah, from my experience, it isn't really about having a degree. It's more about having the projects to show and more job experience than degree at all. And from what I've seen, people rarely ask about degrees at all or show much interest in that. It's really, have you done this before? Show me how you've done it. Walk me through your thinking about this project. So again, I think it's really about like diversifying your portfolio, maybe getting in some examples that are not just from your bootcamp courses, but maybe some more real world, some volunteer projects, some freelance projects, get those in there first. And that'll sort of raise your profile and kind of strengthen your application once you get to that stage where you're applying and interviewing.
Yeah, totally agree with what was said just now. I think like with everybody that I've talked to, where you come from, whether that's a boot camp or that's another different background, like it doesn't really matter, right? Like at the end of the day, the thing that really like is that you're able to showcase is your portfolio, right? And like your portfolio doesn't get dictated based on like where you come from, right? Whether that's boot camps, whether that's like traditional schooling or whatever. So I would say like focus on your portfolio, focus on your case studies, and go all in on that. And don't worry about like, your schooling or like your education or anything like that. I've worked with, designers that were like actors, and that, self-taught themselves and never went to any sort of like boot camp or anything like that. And, are now working in like really, really big places. And all they did was just focus on their craft, right? It's all about the craft at the end of the day. Yeah.
Great. Let's go to the next one. It comes from Uche. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. One can imagine that a good resume and portfolio may be considered to the bare minimum in this quickly growing field. What are some unconventional methods to finding or capitalizing on future opportunities? That's a good one.
Okay. Let me take this. So, firstly, Uche, you got it right. It's a Nigerian name, so the pronunciation was actually right. So, I think Uche, I think the answer is actually that opportunities normally, because you said, well, there's some unconventional methods. And I think I will give you one that I experienced with a colleague I worked with in the past. He's a product designer, and what he did was he listed 10 ad agencies that he really wants to work with, and he sent out his portfolio to all the 10 top agencies in Nigeria. And he sent out his portfolio, sent them reminder every 3 weeks, and then one of them got bothered and invited him to an interview and said, "Okay, you've disturbed us a lot. What do you have? Can you show us what you can do?" And I can, as I'm talking to you, he's been working with the company for 3 years now. So I think sometimes you don't wait for the opportunities; you have to reach out. Just like Franco said, you don't get punished for trying. So you have to make a list of the organization you want to work for or you aspire to work in. Send them an email. Just they have your email there. Have your CV, have your portfolio, have links, everything to show your capacity to deliver at that task. And then send out the email. Nobody punish you for sending out the email. So I think unconventional way is don't wait for vacancies to come out. if you know a CEO that you know that, okay, I want to work in this company, reach out to the CEO, share your portfolio, share the link on DM in LinkedIn, or just connect with them and reach out. So because when you are looking for unconventional way, the conventional way is that you wait for the company to release a vacancy and then you apply. The unconventional way is more in marketing, it is like outbound. So now you are the one going out to reach out to them. You are not waiting for vacancy. So it's unconventional, but before you reach out, make sure everything is right. Your CV, your portfolio, everything is okay. So that at least gets you a foot in the door. So reach out, make a list, reach out, don't wait for vacancies, reach out to companies yourself. So that's the unconventional way to get opportunities.
Yeah, and also like networking is huge. Can't stress. I mean, networking doesn't give you the job, but that's where you can find more opportunities. Maybe this guy who works in a company has an opening, and they didn't know you before, but if you reach out, and immediately he will think of you. So networking and going on LinkedIn, like literally cold messaging, messaging people, asking for information, interviews. I know it's really hard, and if you haven't done it before, it feels awkward. But you'll be surprised at a lot of people that are actually super, super nice, and they're willing to talk to you, help you, tell you about the company and whether they enjoy it or not. So LinkedIn networking or other form of networking, ADPList networking, any kind of networking, just build relationships with people.
Yeah, I just want to like echo that a little bit. Something that I always tell mentees, and this might be a little bit of a I don't know if it's not like non-traditional, but something that I think is going a little bit step above and beyond when it comes to networking is try to just build a rapport and try to build a relationship with the person that you're actually talking to. Because if you think about it, these people are probably getting like messages like all day, every day, right? About people trying to find information about them, trying to find like, what do you do, right? So like, how do you really like stand out from like the pack, right? I would say, or something that I always say is like, okay, don't like, I wouldn't suggest going in right away with like, hey, can you take a look at my stuff? Or can you like, take a look at this? Can you give me feedback? Or like, can you refer me? It just feels very, very unnatural, right? So like, how do you build a relationship with someone? Well, I think you need to show like genuine interest in like what they do, right? So if there's somebody at a company that you're like, oh man, like I really want to be in that guy's position, right? Then you message them, be like, hey, I'd love like 10, 15 minutes of your time to just like quickly talk about like what your position is like, what your day-to-day is like, right? And you just build like this very natural sort of conversation is going. At the end of it, you can kind of just be like, it'd be great if, I would love for you to take a look at my portfolio if you can. If not, it's totally cool, right? And then if they say yes, then you're like, great. Now you have like an inside person at the company that you want to work at in the position that you want to be in, looking at your portfolio from their lens, right? And at that point, you're starting to build this relationship with them again, right? And they're looking at your work. They're looking at the stuff that you're producing. So by the end of it, after a couple of calls back and forth, you can comfortably ask for a referral, right? Or you can comfortably ask them, be like, hey, I saw that there's this position that's open at your company. Do you think I'm ready for it, right? They're going to say yes or no, right? If they say yes, you can comfortably ask for referral at that point in time, right? Because there would be very little reason for them to say no. So that's something that I usually recommend is just go the extra mile a little bit when it comes to networking to like genuinely build a relationship, because it will help you a ton. I guarantee it.
Absolutely. I just left another one of these like networking platforms. It really helped me while traveling. Lunch Club is the name, if anyone is interested. Let's go to the next one. It comes from Caleb. He asked, as a current UX designer, besides looking at the work I deliver on a daily basis, how can I personally measure my own growth?
I mean, that depends on what you view as growth. Is it that you're making more money? Is that you learned a new skill? Like that's what you can base your growth on, is set those goals and then figure out the steps you need to take to achieve them. And smart goals, right? Measurable, achievable, have a reason for how you want to grow and why, and kind of take those steps there in that direction.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Like it especially if it's your personal growth, you have to define like where do you want to grow. Do you want to become a better designer? Do you want to become a leader? And depending on those objectives, you have to create this, as Rebecca was saying, smart goals.
Yeah,
Anyone else
can
want
agree.
to jump in?
Can agree more. You guys said everything I wanted to say. So, I mean, yeah, it really depends on what you want to grow. I mean, money, leadership, management skills. I mean, you first have to define it before you can set your goals in these areas.
And I think very related to this question, Kozar asks, what are the signs that my career growth is stuck and how to overcome it? I'm assuming here we're talking about like professional career and not like personal goals.
I would say for that one, a couple things. If you're bored with your work, you're probably stuck, or you probably need some sort of change, right? Or like, truthfully, like if you just straight up just like don't like what you're doing and you're just like dreading it every single day, you're like, man, this freaking sucks. I hate this. You're probably stuck, and you probably need some sort of change. However, being stuck, again, anything that is relating to growth is very personal. It's very subjective, right? But whenever you're feeling that feeling of just like almost like irritation from work, or like that this sort of like hesitation to even like do anything because you're just not passionate about it anymore, or you're dreading it, right, for whatever reason, like that's probably a good sign that you're a little stuck, right? And you need to find something else to really like feed your fire again. In terms of how to overcome it, first I think is like you need to recognize it, right? You got to recognize that like whether or not it's burnout, or if it's I'm genuinely bored, or like I genuinely just don't like what I'm doing, or whatever that may be, right? You have to recognize that you're stuck, right? And not almost like don't even try to ignore it, right? Because it's always going to be this lingering feeling that you're going to have. And then secondly, I think after that, once you like recognize it, is really to just like figure out like okay, well, what can I do, right? Like what will be the next, like what would be the thing that would get me out of this, that will like light that fire again, right? Like almost imagine yourself and like where would I want to be right now that I think would give me like the most amount of passion, like the most amount of fire, and like what do I want to do with that? And then almost like reverse engineer it, right? Like figure out a way to get there, like step by step. I think that's how I would do it. I know I've been there before when I was working in an agency. Nearing the end of it, I hated it, and I was like, I cannot do this at all. And then I knew what I wanted to do, so I set like a goal and vision for that, and worked like slowly work towards that. But the first step is definitely just recognizing that you need to that you are stuck. On that note, I do need to go. I'm sorry that I have to go a little short, but Everest, Franco, Rebecca, it's been a pleasure to share the stage with you guys. I think you guys are incredible. To everybody else listening in the audience, please feel free. I'm pretty sure my LinkedIn is linked somewhere. Please feel free to connect with me, and I'm always down to chat on the side. But thank you guys for everything.
Oh, thank you so much for coming,
Thanks,
David.
David.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, David. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
The rest of us will still be here.
Yeah,
absolutely. We are still here for a few more minutes. Let's go with the next question. It comes from Ashley, and she asks, what is the best next step you can take to get your first job after getting your certificate or degree? Would you say it's networking, internships, building a more robust portfolio, freelancing, or something else?
I would just go ahead and say all of the above. Networking, if you can get an internship and learn, on the job, that's great. Building a more robust portfolio, that's for sure. I mean, if you have some freelancing work, you can build build more projects to add to your portfolio, that's great too. So I would say all of the above. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, maybe you have a sense, Ashley, of like which is the next step that might be the easiest lift for you. You know, maybe it's going to be a lot easier for you to, you know, get network and then get an internship while you're doing everything else. Or maybe you have some contacts for freelance work, and so you can do that as you're you know, building up your portfolio. So you have the best sense of kind of which step is the right next best step. But I would say don't overwhelm yourself too much. You know, spend a little bit of time each week on maybe one or two of these. You know, and then you maybe in the next month you can switch to a different approach if it doesn't feel like it's working. So kind of A/B test this and see where you're getting the most traction and kind of where it feels like you're building the most skills and things like that.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, while you're looking for a job, let's say you're looking for an internship or a full-time job, freelancing is a good way to support that, you know, while you're out of income and looking for jobs as well. So a lot of these are actually very good combinations.
I think like looking for a job is a job, so you have like 8 hours a day to
It's
do
true.
things, so you can split your time into all these tasks. I personally believe that portfolio should take the biggest chunk, because usually the portfolio like you build on a bootcamp doesn't have the same weight than the the projects that you build on your own, because the ones that you build on your own, like they have the extra challenge. No one was telling you like go this path, or like maybe try this different thing. So it will lead to a lot of exploration, and I think that adds a lot of value. But I mean, if you have 8 hours, I know that in some countries, internships are not a possibility, so you jump directly into a junior role. So in those cases, even more like building a robust portfolio has to be the key point. We'll try to ask a few more questions and also answer a few of the questions through comments. Let's go with Mac's question for now. As a senior UX UI designer, what are some steps someone can take to continue their growth to a director or manager role?
So I think I'll let the designers to answer the question. So, Nina.
I guess just try to take on more responsibilities. If you, I mean, a director or managing role, meaning that you want to manage people or you want to determine, you know, the direction that the company is going. So that is more than the responsibility of just being a designer. You don't just make things pretty, or you don't just solve problems like that. You have to take on more responsibilities, like the company's direction, strategies, as well as managing other designers as well as developers. So once you get more responsibilities, then you can ask for a raise, right? But if you're just doing whatever you've been doing, then it's hard to move on to another role. So if you're interested in, say, getting to a director or managing position, start asking your superiors more responsibilities, like joining strategic meetings, for example, managing developers, for example. Just ask for them. And I mean, I don't think any company would frown on people asking for more work. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think leadership is a skill that like anyone can display. You don't have to be a manager to display a leadership skill. Like so also like check for all the opportunities where you can like display that you have like these capabilities, but also remember that uh, as a product designer or as a UX UI designer, the more you manage, the less you're going to be doing your craft, UX and UI.
Mm.
So that is a trade-off that it's maybe different from product management, for example. Product management is mostly management, so you will manage more. In this case, you will design less, and that is something that you have to take into account.
Yeah, isn't there like always a debate between is it better to be an individual contributor or a manager, right? Like they have pros and cons, and they actually are very different jobs.
Mhm.
So it doesn't necessarily mean you're a manager, then you would make more, for example, or if you're a manager, you would be more of a leader. It doesn't really mean that.
I think we have time for one more question. Perfect. Yeah, let's go with Benjamin. Um, Benjamin asks, the project I have worked on in my current role are sensitive or covered by NDA. What are some alternative ways to showcasing my growth as a designer in my portfolio without being able to refer to these projects? Rebecca?
Yeah, I see Yina also smiling about this one over there too. This is really tough. I think there's two different questions about this left in the chat. One thing is if it's a former employer, or it's harder if it's a current employer, reach out to them, especially if it's someone you've worked for before. Ask, tell them you're applying for jobs and ask, is this still covered under NDA? Is there any part of this I can share as I apply for jobs? Sometimes if you password protect your portfolio, they might be more inclined to let you share it only with employers, especially if it's, some time has passed since you created it. So that's one way. That's sort of the best one that I've found is, if the password protection, is something that you're able to do. Yeah, it's harder when it's not public facing. Did you have something to add, Ina?
Yeah, I actually had the exact same situation a year ago. I worked for a startup called Breathing.ai back then, and it's still a very early stage startup. And I did some work for them, did some research, did some prototyping. And of course, I was applying for UX jobs. I put their project on my portfolio, but I password protected it because I did sign an NDA. But they still don't want it. I mean, they are still super sensitive about it. So in the end, I actually took it off, and then just say that this project is under an NDA. So please contact me if you're really interested in this project to see more. So I think maybe a website, like a public place, is just no good. But if it's like an individual email communication, if that person wants to see some of your work, or you don't even have to send it to them. You can just have a meeting and share it with them, but not like written on a page kind of format. Will probably be okay.
I think we're at time.
Oh my
Yes,
God!
Sorry, I'm trying. I'm trying to answer the chat at the same time. So apologies for that.
No
Cool.
worries.
Yes. So we are time. There are still a few questions that haven't been answered. I will try to reply. I'm assuming that the chats will stick, so I can reply.
I think it might not stick, but
yeah,
yeah.
But
I think a
Sorry,
lot of us are mentors at ADP. If
Yeah.
someone wants to reach out and schedule a mentorship session with us. Yeah, and we just wanted to thank everyone for your really good questions and for joining today. It's been great to hear what's going on and hopefully help answer some of these questions. The job search is hard.
Yep, totally agree.
So I think I saw like two unanswered questions also. So please, as Rebecca said, you can reach out to any one of us on ADPList or even LinkedIn, connect and get on ADPList, so you can get one-on-one with any of the mentors and get your questions answered directly on the platform. So this is not an end to anything; it's just the beginning. So
Yeah, we're talking about networking. So like, get in touch with
yeah,
us, like connect
you
with us,
actually sent
and
me a
start your networking.
LinkedIn
Practice
request
with us.
while on the festival. So two people already sent out a LinkedIn request to me that, oh, we're joining you and we see what you guys are doing. Can we connect? And I find that really interesting and that's amazing. So they are not even waiting for a minute. So they're already sending in the request. So I've accepted them anyway. So that's really smart. Yeah.
Great.
Great. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining, and hope to talk with some of you in the future.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Bye.
Franco. Thanks Ina. Thanks Rebecca.
Thank you.
And David in absentia.
Thank you, Evers.
All right.